With this video, I will be covering the Photon Animator View as well the Photon Transform View. This is an extra video and it's not related to the previous videos of the series. So like before, we'll be putting everything in the extra project folder. You don't have to be watching the previous videos to understand what's going on here either. So I don't have any models to show you the animations for and show how they're working over the network. So I need to go grab one off the asset store. First I'm going to go ahead and make a folder. I'm going to drop it in my extra folder and I'm just going to call it Animator Transform View just to keep organized. That's all it's for. And then I'm going to open up the asset store and you're going to look for Unity-Chan. Make sure you put the dash in there. If you don't, it will not show up. And it is a free asset and it will always be a free asset, or at least it's supposed to be. So once you find it, go ahead and click it and then choose import. I'm going to go ahead and import everything. So leave everything selected and then hit import in the bottom right. And once it is done importing, I'm just going to move over the Unity-Chan folder and drop it into my Animator Transform View folder. Just right here. So I'm going to drag it over. I already have a scene set up which spawns in a character over the network. So you'll probably have to have that as well. If you were following my tutorial previously, we'll be using the game scene. If you have not, just have a scene set up to where you can instantiate in a unit, and then we will begin from there. To begin, I'm just going to temporarily bring in my new player prefab here. This is one I made previously. It's kind of ugly. It's not the one we just downloaded or imported. And now I'm going to find the Unity-Chan model. So it should be under Unity-Chan and then models. And we're actually going to grab the one for models, not from prefabs. And then I'm just going to put it together. I'm going to be clicking between the Unity-Chan and my new player model. You can just keep your Unity-Chan selected. I'm just looking between the two for references of what I need. Okay, so I'm going to add the player movement script on there. This is a simple script I made that just handles really basic turning and moving forward and back. And I don't think I need the box collider, but I do need the Photon view so it syncs across the network, of course. And in the past I showed you how to use on Photon serialized view for syncing up the transform position, but in this video we're actually going to use the transform view. It's something that came along after I started making the videos. So Photon Transform View is the name of it. Go ahead and add that script. And the options are pretty self-explanatory. You can synchronize the position, the rotation, and the scale. I'm not going to do the scale. The rotation is just how quickly it turns to the rotation of the owner. For faster rotation, usually on controllers I'll use 360 for like characters and whatnot, so they turn rather quickly. And for the position, estimated speed I find tends to be the best. It essentially tries to guess where the character will be, and it does a pretty good job too. You have the teleport if distance is greater than. Can't really see it because it's covered up. Here we go. So that's if the distance is greater than 3 units, it will teleport to the actual location. Distance being where it's drawn and where it should be. You can toggle that on or off here. So once you have this set up to your liking, you just click and hold the component, and then drag it into the observed component. And that's it. That gets around all the scripting that we've done in the previous videos. So it's really handy, super quick to set up, and pretty accurate as well. So now I need to make a really quick controller. I know it imported some, but I want to use my own to keep it simple so that you can get the idea what all the extra stuff in there. So I'm going to go back to my extra folder, Animator Transform View, and I'm going to do create. and I am looking for an Animator controller. I'm going to call it Basic Unity Chan. I'm going to go ahead and select the model again, or the game object in the scene, and I'm going to drop this onto the controller under the Animator component. Then I'm going to open up the controller we just made, and we need an animation for when you first enter. I think that I'm going to use a blend state for that. So right click, create state from new blend tree. I'm not going to name it, just double click it, open it up. We're going to add 2 motion fields. So over here in the top right we have motion, click the little plus sign and click add motion field, so you have 2 of them. Keep in mind this is not an animation tutorial, so I'm going to go very quick with all this. For the motion, let me just see what we have here. It has to be an idle one. Yeah, I imagine that's an idle one. And let's find one for running. Okay, so walk 00 underscore F. So we have wait 00 and walk 00 underscore F. And the threshold, or the parameter here, is going to be between 0 and 1. And we need to actually add in a parameter. This one's actually already here. It says blend. I'm going to call it, we'll say, let's call it input. And it should be here in the drop down. It will automatically select it if it's the only one you have. If not, go ahead and do so. You don't see anything in my tree down here because I don't have a model selected. So I'm just going to hit Unity model. And as I move this forward, you can see that it's moving into the other state. So there are generally 2 types of parameters you'll be working with when you're using the Photon Animator View. That is your everyday boolean, floats, integers, whatever, and also triggers. Triggers are a bit tricky, and I'll talk about that once we get along here. I'm going to call this one, I'm just going to call it taunt. So I have my taunt trigger and my input float. So now I'm going to go back to the base layer, and I need to find a taunt animation. So I'm going to go into my Unity Chan folder, go under animations, and I don't know if there is an actual taunt one. I'll just use this one, the lose 00. So I'm going to drag that up, and then I'm going to right click any state, make transition to lose, and I'm going to click the transition arrow, and under conditions I'm going to do taunt. So whenever taunt is triggered, it's going to perform the lose animation. And then I want an exit time from lose to blend tree. So I did a transition, and you should have has exit time checked. Go ahead and save, and let's go to the movement script I already have. So I'm going to go back to my scene, select the Unity Chan model, and I will open up my player movement script. I want to save the old code just for the sake of it being there. So I'm going to do a public bool use transform view. And I'm going to set it to true by default. And then I'm going to do, I'm going to go down to smooth move. And I'm going to do if use transform view return. The smooth move was used to smooth out the movement between the character and the target position, but the transform view would take care of that, so we don't need this anymore. Now I'm going to copy these 2 lines, and I'm going to also paste it right below on Photon serialized view. And if I go back to the editor, it should be checked automatically once it compiles. There we go. Alright, well, what I am going to do is I'm going to change things inside the animator. So I already have some pretty basic controls here which move the transform, rotate it as well. I'm going to use the vertical input, and I'm going to pass that into the animator. I don't actually have a reference to my animator yet, so I'm going to do that right now. And I've changed my naming convention, so it's going to be a little bit different than what I've been doing. Don't mind that. I think this is just a little bit easier to follow. So I made a private animator, named it Animator. Now I just need to assign it, equals get component animator. That's under awake. Now I'm going to go back down to input, and I'm going to do Animator dot set float. And the name is going to be input because that's what we named it in the parameter, and the value is going to be vertical. So now I just need one more check for the trigger, which is going to be the taunt. So I'm going to do if input dot get key down, and I will use I think I'll use key code space. So if the spacebar is press, I'm going to do in animator dot set trigger taunt. Okay, so we're passing in our vertical value to the animator, and if we press the spacebar, it will perform the taunt. Go ahead and save, and let's go back to the engine. I don't need my temporary player or my old player here anymore, so I'm going to go and press delete. I will also, actually I'm going to keep UnityChan in the scene for now, so I'm going to save the scene. And I'm going to go back to my main scene, and if you haven't followed my previous tutorials, you can skip this. This is just a testing phase, more or less. So I'm making a room, I'm going to join it, and let's see. Whoa, she's way too fast. Okay. So I press spacebar, and the taunt thing is working, but I clearly need to adjust the speed, because that's insane. So I'm going to hit play to stop it, go back to the game scene, and looks like I have it hard coded, so I'm going to go back to the script real quick, and I'm going to change the move speed to like 0.1. I don't really care if it moves, I'm just going to do it for the sake of the animation. So I'm going to pause the recording here, and I'm just going to jump back to the main lobby and start it back up. Okay, so I went to the lobby, made a match, and joined it. And I'm back in now. I can see that the walk animation is playing, as well the taunt animation, so that's good. So now we just need to make it work over the network. So I'm going to hit play to stop it, and I'm going to go back to my game scene, select UnityChan, and now I'm going to add the Animator View. And it's right here, Photon Animator View. And you have a couple options. You have the layer weights. This is mostly for if you're blending multiple layers, for example. If you've done animation in the past, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that disabled. For the synchronize parameters, you have the options of disabled, which simply does not synchronize it, discrete, and continuous. The documentation does not really specify much detail what either of these do. But from what I gather, essentially discrete is less aggressive and does not watch it as frequently, which might be good for things that don't have to be as precise, whereas continuous is the opposite. It does watch it more aggressively. For triggers, they say that you should generally use continuous because triggers can be missed. They only fire off in practically one frame, so sometimes they're missed. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to continuous. And for input, I'm going to use discrete. You'll get a message that says, when using triggers, make sure this component is the last in the stack. So what that means is under Photon View, you have observed components, and right now I have the transform view in there. I'm going to add a plus sign to open up another box, and then I'm going to drop in the Animator View. And when it says last in the stack, it means it should be on the very bottom of this entire list. And you can use these to move them around generally. It's not letting me, maybe I don't have enough, but that's what they're there for if you have to move your things around. So now I need to make it so this spawns over the network. So I'm going to do that now. I have my resources folder and my prefabs folder. Remember, if you want to spawn something over the network, it has to be in the resources folder. And I just had the prefabs for organization. So right now it's spawning a new player. I'm going to rename that to new player Z. I'm going to drag in UnityChan, and I will rename that to new player. I have a script that spawns in the new player prefab That's why I did that. So rather than change the script, I just dropped in the Unity model here and just renamed it to new player. So once that's done, I'm going to delete new player from my hierarchy, and I will test this out. So I saved my scene, and now I'm going to go back to my main scene, and let's see what happens. Well, it should work right away. It should spawn it for sure. Alright, so it actually put my player way over here. It's kind of far away. Okay, so everything's working, but we don't know if it's working over the network. So I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to compile the game. And this is my first compile in a while, so I'm going to pause the recording while it compiles and then start it back up when it's done. Alright, so it just finished compiling. I have it over here in the corner. I'm going to hit play. Oh, it's a little bigger than I meant. I probably should have made that smaller. Anyway, let's just make a room. I'm going to hit play in the editor. And if you're doing this on your own, of course, you're not going to have this set up, but this will show you that it's working. Oops, I already have a room. I'm just going to join it. So now I need to start. Right, so I have my two models over here. Alright, so this is really tiny. So I can see that it's turning, so the transform view is working. And as I press walk or W on my keyboard, you can see that it's animating on both screens. It is really far away, but you can see that it is animating. Now if I press the spacebar, you can see that the taunt is working. So this is actually the bottom one here that you're seeing in the scene is the one in this window right here. So whenever you're seeing that animate, you know it's working. So when I go back to my player and I rotate this one, you can tell it's rotating the top one. So everything is actually working just fine. There is one more thing I want to show you though. That's actually all you have to do, but there's something I recommend doing instead of using the trigger monitor. It's not always accurate, so there's actually another method I would go about in setting that up. So with everything closed, I'm going to go back to my project tab here. I'm going to go to my resources prefabs folder, select the new player, which is the model what we just set up. I'm going to go to the taunt for synchronized parameters, and I'm going to change that to disabled. So all we're actually monitoring right now is the input. And there's been multiple reports of triggers not always firing, and I've seen it myself, and I don't think they fixed it, and they've been trying hard, but it just hasn't happened. It's hit or miss too. So my opinion, this is probably the better way to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the player movement script, which is where I set up my trigger call, and I'm going to make a RPC. So I'm going to name it private void RPC. Perform taunt. I'm gonna make it pun RPC so that I can call it over the network, and then I'm going to just copy this line right here, and then I'm going to paste it down there, and then right here I'm going to make a call to it. So Photon View, which is a reference to my Photon View component I have assigned up top, dot RPC perform taunt photon targets dot all. So all targets will cast it to other players as well yourself. When you're casting it to yourself, it will be instantaneous. I don't even think it goes over the network. I think it just does it locally. So once you make those changes, save. So instead of calling the animator itself, we're just going to call an RPC, which sets the trigger on all clients. So I need to build that again. So I'm going to do build and run. You can see the second build is much quicker. I'm going to make a room on my editor and then join it over here. And I'm going to start it on my editor. So I have, looks like my editor is the bottom model now. and this one is the right model. I know you probably can't see it on this tiny screen over here in the bottom right, but it is moving, just as you see it moving up top as well. So the walk animation is still working, of course. We hadn't changed that. The one we did change was the taunt, which was spacebar. So I'm going to go ahead and press spacebar, and you can see that it's still working. And it'll work on both, of course. And that's all it is to it. Instead of using the trigger monitoring, I recommend that you call it over an RPC because it's much more reliable and it will work every time, whereas the triggers do not. And that's it for this video.